Oh, man.
What are you laughing at?
Just thinking about PowerPoint stuff and a lot. Okay, guys, we are in Accounting 201. We are starting week 2.
There's no wording on this thing.
Okay, so here we go. We're on day 3. Starting about 5 minutes late. We had technical difficulties. Our computers won't talk to each other. So the IT folks had to come in and help us out with this. So as we go through chapter 2, we're going to look at the conceptual framework for financial reporting. So a lot of the things we tell you guys to do in Accounting 101 as far as preparing the financial statements, today, as we go through class, I'm going to talk about what we tell you to do, what you were going to do. Okay? So we're going to explain the theory behind what we have included as far as doing our financial statements. You guys did wonderful, putting your income statements together, your balance sheet, your owner's equity statement. Now we're going to come back and talk about all those component parts on a much higher level. So today, as we start, we have 7 different learning objectives. We have the first one is describe the usefulness of the conceptual framework. Then we'll move on to understanding the objective of financial reporting. By the time we get to the end, we're going to talk about the accounting assumptions. You remember we talked about historical cost versus fair cost, fair market value. We'll talk about that a little bit today. So, again, as we talked about in chapter 1, there was a need for a coherent set of standards because we had how many different committees had put together standards for us in accounting. You guys remember from chapter 1? Three. Okay, very good. I'm standing here holding 3 fingers up, asking the question. You guys aren't. Okay. And so I'm sure each committee had its own set of ways it wanted to do things. They had bulletins, advisories, those type of things. And so now we have pronouncements. So there's also a thing put in place, or a process put in place to solve new and emerging practical problems. When we talk about practical, we're talking about people that are in the practice, so that we can solve the problems they have. Is it important for us to kind of look and see what kind of problems we think people might have? Okay, so that actually solves problems before they come to be full-blown issues, and so that's one of the things we're talking about here when we talk about new and emerging. So we start to see things coming up. It's almost like driving down the road and you start seeing an obstacle up the road. What are you going to do when you see an obstacle up the road? You're going to start making preparations to either stop or what? Or go around. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing in accounting. We're going to keep things in view. We're going to see, and we have everything put in process so that we can take care of those issues. So here's a question for you guys. I'm sure you guys all have read chapter 2. The conceptual framework underlying financial accounting is important because it can lead to consistent standards, and it describes the nature, function, and limits of financial accounting and financial statements. Is that answer true or false? You guys got a 50-50 on this one. I got some folks saying true. Okay, most everybody saying true. True. Okay. A conceptual framework underlying financial accounting is necessary because future accounting practice problems can be solved by reference to the conceptual framework, and a formal standard setting body will not be necessary. I see a couple folks shaking heads, so that means it's going to be what? False? Okay. It's false. Okay, so what do the numbers mean? The need for conceptual framework is highlighted by the accounting scandals such as Lehman Brothers and Enron. To restore the public confidence in the financial reporting process, a lot of folks have argued that you should move toward principle-based rules. What happens is they believe that companies exploited the detailed provisions in the rules-based, so principles-based versus rules-based. Again, they looked at the particular rule and said, this is how I can circumvent that rule, instead of having the principle of it or the underlying or overruling an idea. So, again, they're trying to say that had it been principles-driven versus rules-driven, these would not have been issued. Okay, FASB has issued 7 statements of financial accounting concepts for business enterprises. Number 1 is objectives of financial reporting. Notice that it tells you that has been superseded by what? Number 8. Okay, so here we see that number 2 has been superseded by number 8. So we go back and we can look and pull these up. Number 3 has been superseded by number 6. And number 6 tells you that it actually replaces number 3. And number 8 tells you that it replaces number 1 and 2. So
why is there no number 4?
Why is there no number 4? Number 4 in our book.
I mean, up there it says 7 statements. And
It does say 7,
number 8, and
right?
it's
And then we go to number 8.
Number 4 in the book.
I'm not sure why they skipped over the 4.
Well, I mean, if those have been superseded, then
Yeah,
they're still listed.
yeah, those are listed. So it would be
The numbers people didn't understand.
SFAC.
so somebody's saying that the number of people didn't know how to count. That's possible.
The Bible says something about non-business organizations.
Okay.
That's number 4.
So there's a little preface there on the bottom of the page 39, and it says, FASB also issued a statement of financial accounting concepts related to non-business organizations.
That says business enterprise.
So this is and that's the reason that was left out, because this has to do with the financial accounting concept.
Since that whole reading fine print.
Yeah, I have to go back and sometimes remember, and I'm glad they did that for us here. They gave us a little footnote there to tell us why we didn't have it. I think I remember looking at that and I didn't really pay attention what it was trying to tell me, because I saw it before, but it didn't include it. All right. So, overview of the conceptual framework. So you have your first level, that's going to be your basic objectives. The second level is going to be qualitative characteristics and elements. The third level is going to be recognition, measurement, and disclosure concepts. We talk about disclosure. You guys remember those notes to the financial statements for the disclosure? So we'll talk a little bit of that as we finish up our lecture this morning. So here is a illustration section in your textbook. So here is the first level. Again, this is a pyramid turned upside down. This is the first level. So the first level is the why do we have the accounting. And the objective is to provide information about the reporting entity that is, the first word here is useful. Why is that word important? It has to be useful, or why do we do it? Okay? You know, it's got to be useful. There'd be no reason to do it if it's not useful. It's going to be useful to who? present and potential equity investors. Equity investors. Okay. And other creditors in their capacity as capital providers. Then we come up to the second level. The second level is just a bridge between 1 and 3 here. So why and how, and this is a bridge. So it talks about the elements. It talks about assets, liabilities, equity. You guys remember we talked a little bit about gains and losses, okay, revenues and expenses. And then it talks about the qualitative characteristics. It has to have what? Relevance. Okay. If it's not relevant, then it's probably, if it's not relevant, it's probably not useful. Okay, so it has to be relevant to be useful. Faithful representation. Oh my goodness, that ties directly into useful, right? Okay. And enhancing qualities, those are important too. Notice here under the enhancing qualities, there's a thing called timeliness. Timeliness. Have you guys ever paid attention that when companies put out their quarterly profits, that usually it's within a month's time period after the previous quarter ended? You guys ever pay attention to that? Pay attention to that next time that we're getting to the. A lot of companies they're actually follow the March will be the end of the quarter. Okay, what will be the next end of the quarter? June. Okay, so pay attention when you're listening to the radio a little bit here. Okay, and so our next quarter ending will be September. Look and come back and let's talk about this a little bit in class. In October, you'll hear about companies that are actually disclosing or reporting their earnings for the previous quarter. How good would that do me if we close the quarter in March and you give the information out to the public in September? That we had a quarter that ended in March and reported those findings to the public in September. That's 6 months out, okay? Again, if I'm going to be a potential investor or creditor, I want that information to be timely. And timeliness is important. Doesn't mean that you have to be there sitting when the end of the month comes or the end of the quarter and then start rushing to put everything together. It means that within a reasonable time period, you have everything completed. We talk about that with you guys a little bit? Because I know some of you guys are probably going to be doing accounting and you're going to be doing some end of the month reporting and such as that. In the actual practice of accounting, we do not sit here on the last day of the month and gather all the information and don't go home until all the information has been put into the system. Follow what I'm trying to say here? We actually come in the next business day and start the process then of making the adjustments, the adjusting entries to the system. We put a date of the last day of the month, so we pull our reports that it'll put it in the proper time period. Okay. A lot of times we don't talk about that in class, and so sometimes people leave and they're just kind of didn't have an understanding that, hey, I have a couple of weeks I have a week or so after the month ends to get everything completed. Actually, having practice here at Aiken Technical College, at the end of every month, I had a week to get copier charges in, postage charges, bookstore charges, those type of things. The departments will over box supplies to the bookstore, and then print out budget sheets. The budget sheet would have their budget and their expenditures on a monthly basis. Okay, so that was my one of my key goals was to have everything out within a week time period. All right, guys, that makes sense. Had you guys thought about that process that you had the last day of the month and you got all these things you got to have completed? Well, no, you don't complete them on that day. My goodness, it's same kind of New Year's would be. It would be kind of traumatic there. All right. So here's a question. What are the statements of financial accounting concepts intended to establish? And again, those are some very good concepts. You're saying what? C?
Yeah.
Well, let's see if you have the right answer. It will be C. Okay. So we're looking for developing the standards of the financial accounting and the reporting there. All right. Moving on to learning objective number 2, understand the objective of financial reporting. So again, why do we do this? Why do we do this? Why? So we want to provide financial information about the reporting entity that is, again, that keyword is useful. Okay. Sometimes people look for reports and you say, how do you use that? Okay. Is that actually useful? To present, to present potential equity investors, lenders, and other creditors in making decisions. Okay, just to refresh our memory, we're using the term equity investors here, so that means they're doing what? They're buying shares of stock. Okay. They are not buying bonds, because bonds, the terminology will be what? Debt. Debt. Okay, so these are actually owners because they're equity investors. Here's another question here. So according to the facts we conceptual framework, the objectives of financial reporting for business enterprises are based on what? Conservatism is important. GAAP is important. Stewardship is important. What? D. You guys done? We'll go ahead and. Did E?
A or D?
A or D? D. The needs of users of information. So they wanted to make sure that we are providing information that is useful to equity investors, creditors, such as that. Here we go. Number 3. That was fast, wasn't it? Identify the qualitative characteristics of accounting information. Qualitative accounting information characteristics. So the facts identify the qualitative characteristics of accounting information distinguishes better from inferior. Better than inferior. So you have better accounting, you have inferior accounting. Okay. So when we talk about this, the inferior provides less useful information for the decision-making purposes. We're looking to provide the more useful information for the folks who use that information. Here we go. The primary users of accounting information, capital providers, as investors and creditors. They're looking for decision-useful information. And again, when we get toward the end of the class, we'll talk about the cost constraint as we go through that process. So we're looking for that information to have a relevance, and we're looking for that to have faithful representation. Faithful representation. Okay. So I know you guys had a picture taken of you, and you said, that picture looks nothing like me. Has that ever happened to you guys, where somebody takes a snapshot and you say, it's kind of hard to say a snapshot doesn't capture you, but it would be easy to say if somebody did a painting or a drawing, okay, so we'd be more apt to be able to say that with that. So faithful representation means that whatever's been reported in the financial statements is true based on the books that they were provided on. So let's go ahead and look at the ingredients of the relevance, predicted value, confirmatory value, and a big thing here is materiality. Materiality. Is it material? Okay. Have we talked about that concept with you guys in classes before? I don't recall mentioning materiality to you guys before. Okay. So let me just give you guys an example of materiality and before we get too far in class, so you guys will actually have a very good understanding of materiality. Some of our other classes we call this story time. Okay. So once upon a time, I was actually the supervisor, the bookstore manager. So we did our inventory. Guess who was present for the inventory? We were looking to do our inventory during just a day. We started at 8 o'clock, so we're hoping to be finished by 4 or 5 or 6 o'clock at night. It didn't go quite as well because we had some issues, some glitches with the computer software, and so we had some glitches with people finding stuff and stuff as that. So close to about 11 o'clock that night, we were doing inventory. My people had found everything except for a box of ink pens. Follow what I'm trying to say? You know, the box of ink pens, if you take them out and you sell them individually, they could not find a box of ink pens. We had numerous people that were salaried, so they weren't getting anything extra for being there at night. But I had a fair number of people there that were hourly, and they were actually being compensated for being there. So we're spending this time and we're looking for a $20 box of pens. We're holding all these people and we're just looking, tearing the store apart. I said, hold, stop, everything. Write it off. And I used the terminology that $20 box of pen is not material. It will not make a big difference to our financial statements if we write off that $20 box of pens. If we find that box of pens over the course of the next few weeks or months or whatever, we'll just put it back in inventory. Okay, so materiality. So what we said with materiality, and your textbook talks a little more in detail about it. It talks about a percentage. But I'm going to tell you, for me, materiality means is that it doesn't make a hill of beans about the final outcome. Okay? So if you have $100,000 and you misplace a $10 bill, probably not going to go crazy looking for that $10 bill. Okay. If you only have $100 and you misplace a $10 bill, you're turning everything upside down looking for that $10 bill. You follow what I'm trying to say here? And so for you, with $100, $10 is material. We have $100,000, then $10 then becomes immaterial. They're moving on to hill beans. Okay. Read the concept they talk about in your textbook. We're probably going to see a little bit of that in just a minute here. But I wanted to touch on that basically because I don't think we really talked a good bit about materiality with you guys. You got a question, Melissa?
Yeah, it's kind of related. How did online business do like this digital? Do they have inventory? It's digital.
Okay, so the digital businesses have inventory. Okay, so let's just stop and talk about the types of businesses that can be online. It could be a business online that actually takes your order, and then once they take your order, they place an order with a different company, and so that other company then will do what we call a drop shipment. Instead of coming back to me and then emailing it out to you, those folks aren't going to have a major inventory. Okay. But if I'm an online company, I'm actually fulfilling the orders that are taking place. Yes, I'm going to have inventory.
I mean, I know some business have it like it's just downloaded. They create some, I guess, background and picture or something. It's just
Okay. So it's just digital.
So you mean someone who's business that sells a digital product
Yeah.
like
Digital
a
product.
downloaded video game? that doesn't actually exist.
Would they
on the
have
card.
inventory?
They're probably going to have inventory. They're probably going to keep up the number of, like if you're doing the video games, how many they sold, and they'll have well, let's just come back and say this. If that video game is going to have a unique product code to it, hear what I'm saying here? Is if it has a unique product code to it, then that company had to actually buy the right to sell that, and then was allotted that a number from hitting this number to that number with a product code. And so yeah, they're going to have inventory, but it's all going to be stored in the computer. So they're not really going to have a physical inventory, but they will have an inventory. Yeah. That's a pretty good question. So did I come anywhere near answering your question? Okay.
I would just kind of bet because it's kind of unlimited.
So it's like my daughter ordered a textbook, a digital textbook. I'm like, we don't have to worry about if they're in stock or not because it's digital. But yeah, we do because they have a fixed number of licenses to actually send out those digital copies. So there is some control constraints on those
I
items.
think that can vary based on the product.
It can.
Because I could see something like that for textbooks, but I don't see something like that for being the case for a lot of as I mentioned on video games that don't necessarily go through all that licensing stuff.
And then some things are just free. And those things that are free, they're not going to have any kind of number associated with those. Okay, good question.
I was just, as you were talking about, I was thinking about your example there about materiality. Personally, though, you do have to be careful with that, or you end up being like the government, where everything's just little, so it's immaterial, then after a while, I mean, you have to be careful how many times you decide something's immaterial, because then it's becoming very significant.
You have to make a determination. So if I were in the bookstore that night and we had 100 things that were $100 a piece, oh my goodness, we're going to be looking for those things. Okay. So again, if I lost 50 $10 bills, I'm going to be looking for those things. Okay, you follow what we're trying to say here? So it has to add up. So you go back and you look, and I think it was they gave a percentage in the textbook about what a lot of companies will determine will be material.
Under 5% of net income.
5% of net income would be immaterial, so it would make again, in the South, we talked about, would make a hill of beans. Well, that's what we're talking about here. It's not gonna break us or make us. Okay. So that's just like when somebody shortchanges you and you decide, hey, it's not worth the hassle to go back to the store or whatever. But if you gave them a $100 bill and they shorted you $20, you're gonna turn that car around and go back in and say, hey, look, we got an issue. Okay. But again, you're right. We can't just determine that everything we had was immaterial. Completeness, neutrality, free from error. Now, can we totally be free from error? Probably not. It's like I tell folks on campus, and I tell you guys, I'll say, are you staying in trouble? And the answer is, well, people say, well, I'm trying to stay out of trouble. Okay, so we're going to get in trouble no matter what, but the kicker is that we're trying to stay out of trouble. So here with free from error, we're trying to be free from error, but we know that we're going to make mistakes because it's part of our human nature to make mistakes. Some guys will be turning numbers. We call that transpositions. So if we have a difference, if that difference is divisible by what number? Is divisible by 9, then most likely it was a transposition error. Have you guys heard that before about the divisible by 9?
Oh, you look at those like weird.
I'm not looking at something weird. I know you heard about the divisible by 9 because we talked about it in our class. Now, whether you were sleeping that day or whatever. Okay. Teaching accounting is a lot like watching Charlie Brown. That teacher on Charlie Brown, that I can see when I'm actually hearing that I've got words coming out, but I can see sometimes that you just guys are just have a perception of one. So that's why sometimes I step back and try to re-explain the concept of it. I just can't. Comparability, verifiability. So with the comparability, this helps us if it's been presented by using GAAP and all these kind of things. We can compare company with company. Verifiability means that the person coming behind us can do a computation of our financial reports, and guess what? The report should be substantially the same, about the same.
If they repeat our steps, they should be able to get the results.
They should be able to get the results that we've come up with.
Like science.
It is. So we talk about verifiability. We're talking about it is like science. If you follow that recipe, the cornbread should come out of the oven just like somebody else's. Okay. If you follow the recipe. Okay. Well, it could be.
Yeah, that can depend on your particular touch.
Usually when I think about dicing this, I think about my diced tomatoes or whatever.
Actually, I think it's something else.
Okay, we'll move on now to our next concept here. So relevance. Here's the measurement constraints. We can here. Again, this is the same chart you saw a while ago. And so here's what we're talking about here with the qualitative characteristics. Predicted value. So it must be relevant, must be capable of making a difference in the decision. If it's not going to be relevant, if it's not going to affect your decision, then is there a reason to report it? Predicted value. A financial place has predicted value has value as an input to a predictive process used by investors to form their own expectations about the future. Okay, so if I'm looking at your financial statements and all I see is one income statement, I do not see any other years of information for your income statements that they have predicted value for. No, so that's why we include at least the previous year's information, so you can see if there has been an increase or a decrease in net income, revenues, expenses, and those kind of things. So if I see that you made more money this year than you did last year, and I go back and I look at the previous years and I see that you made more money that year than you did the year before, what's my prediction? That you'll make more money next year. Okay, so that's why we look at the financial sector and go back and look. And again, I'm going to tell you this, I'm not going to get a lot of information just by looking at 2 years. I need to look about 5 years to really get a good understanding of where you're headed. Now, with that said, remember we have the business cycle. Remember we have external pressures, the economy, job rates, and those type of things, and so they can affect the company. Conformatory value. This conforms or relevant information also confuses, confirm, or correct their prior expectations. So it helps you have an understanding that, hey, I looked at what we did a couple of years ago and I thought we're going to make money this year. So if we did, then I'm okay. But if we didn't, I need to come back and say, I should have seen those expenses going up. I should have seen that there was a incremental increase in the expenses, or there was a decrease in the amount of revenue that was taken in. We've already talked about materiality. Information is material if omitting or misstating it can influence the decision that users make on the basis of reported financial information. So it would make a difference. It would be more than just a hill of beans. Okay, so it would change their mind. So if we left off an expense that we thought was immaterial, okay. what could happen here. Our income will be overstated. People could make a decision to invest in us because of our, so you see where we're going with that. Okay, what do the numbers mean again? The need for conceptual framework is highlighted again by the accounting scandals of who? Enron and Lehman Brothers, okay. So this is basically the same thing we saw just a minute ago. But here we're talking about transparent reporting. Transparent reporting. So that's going to be reporting. So that's a big word. That's a big byword in the accounting profession. Transparency. We don't want to show that we're just going off in the back somewhere and we're doing our calculations. We're going to have everything fully disclosed. This is how we came up with this number, guys. Okay, that's what we're looking at. Having that transparency. Faithful representation. That's the next section here. So here we're talking about completeness. Faithful representation means the numbers and descriptions match what really existed or happened. Okay. Have you ever noticed something that happened and then somebody after the fact trying to make it mean that it was something else?
Like a history textbook.
Like a history textbook? That can happen sometimes. We do have some textbooks that do not have a faithful representation of actually what happened. Okay. So some people might have actually been there. They read that textbook, that history book, and they say, where were you guys? Where were you guys at, or whatever? Okay. Same thing happened in the accounting world. We were in the company, and we get our hands on the financial statements and say, is this the right company they're talking about? Because this is not what happened. Okay. We lost money. You guys are showing that we made money. Okay. Or we made money, you guys are showing that we lost money. So it can be either way as we look at that concept there. Faithful representation shows you what happened. Now, can numbers give a complete, true picture of everything that happened in the company that previous year? No, that's the reason we need those notes of disclosure statements. So completeness means that all the information that is necessary for faithful representation is provided. So we talk about everything. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay. Neutrality means that a company cannot select information to favor one set of interested parties over another. So again, we put it all out there. Okay. And then free from error, it's going to be accurate. We're going to give it our best shot. Here we have another company we can talk about now. We got away from Enron and Lehman Brothers. Some young technology companies, in an effort to attract investors who will get them strike it rich, are using some unconventional financial terms in their financial reports. An example, instead of revenue, these privately held companies use terms such as bookings, annual recurring revenues, or other numbers that often exceed actual revenues. What happens when we report our revenues being more than our actual revenues were? For our financial statements, a faithful representation of what happened? No, they're fictitious. Okay. They're fictitious. That means that they're fiction. And again, it could be a blend of fiction and non-fiction, so that can happen. So look here, if you see that their billings was $100 million, but the revenue they recognized for 2014 was only $46 million. Is there a difference between $46 million and $100 million? No. Is it material? Yes. Okay, so these folks actually get in trouble. Lie. We call this creative accounting. Okay, here's another example. Giver Technologies. They noted that it's on target. There was $2 billion in bookings for 2015. Okay. So bookings and revenue, is that the same thing? No. Yeah, so you have to be careful.
So those were just forecasts, right?
Those were forecasts. So you bring your 25% on a dollar booking. So if you have bookings of 10 billion, and you're only getting, okay, that's like me saying that I'm building somebody a house, and my revenue that's going to come in from that house is going to be $200,000. Do I actually put $200,000 in my pocket as profit? No, I have to subtract the expenses. Here with Uber, they have to give 75%, and I know that because 25 cents on every dollar, so that means that 75 cents of every dollar goes to who? The driver.
But they're supposed to get.
They're supposed to get.
They're supposed to get 80%, that's it.
Yeah. So whatever they're getting, they're supposed to get that. And so I can't really go out and market my company and say that I have $100 billion in bookings because it's misleading, because it almost looks like you have $100 billion in revenue or sales. Okay. So here we'll talk about comparability. You can have different companies and been compared in the same way they're going to be compared. Verifiable. Using the same methods, you can get similar results. Timeliness, having information available decision making before it loses its capacity to influence decisions. So again, if I'm giving you the March order information in September, it has lost its timeliness because you're now looking to see that in September, hey, I need to wait a little bit because the September information should come out in October. Understandability is the quality of information that lets reasonably informed users see the significance. Now we use the term reasonably informed users. That doesn't mean that you have to have an accounting degree, but you have to have an understanding of accounting, guys, to look at your income statement and the balance sheet and your statements, all those things, right? Would you need that?
I mean, probably if you're going to attempt to look at things you're investing, you should.
You should.
Try to understand that.
Yeah. So, hence, management and marketing students on college campus day can they 101 and 102, so they can have an understanding of those concepts. Okay, basic elements here, assets, liabilities, those things. So we'll talk about those again. And remember, this is the bridge between the why and the how on our little chart. So define basic elements of financial statements. Okay. Statement number 10 defines 10 interrelated elements that relate to measure the performance and the financial status of the business enterprise. Okay. So if you guys will remember, and please tell me that you remember this, on the balance sheet is it for a time period or for a particular day? Like for a particular day. Okay. Because my assets can change. Somebody can come in and pay their bill, accounts receivable will go down, and cash will go up. On a particular day, I may pay a bill that I have, my payable would go down, and my cash would also go down. Okay, so we look at these as a moment in time. A moment in time. When I was coming along in school, it was not too far from, I guess it really was a good little ways from. And I think they made a comeback. We actually say this is like a snapshot of Polaroid. This is this particular day. This is what it looked like on this day. The things on the other side are going to be for a period of time. Period of time. So it can be for a month, quarterly, semi-annually, annually. You guys will be there? Okay, so this is what we're talking about, the concepts of the period of time. So when we do a statement of owner's equity, it's going to be for a time period. And again, that's going to include distribution to owners, comprehensive income is going to be listed there too, revenues, expenses, gains, losses. So those are going to show up on the income statement, owners, statement of owner's equity or retained earnings, how you will look at it, and then also the statement of cash flow. Those all have on the top, when we do the name of the company, the name of the report, and the day. So guys, this is what we told you, all that information was given to you back then, is that because the assets, the liabilities, and the equity, it's just for a moment in time. Everything else over here is going to be for a time period. Anybody remember back to your accounting 101 days that anybody had an issue with putting down that the balance sheet was for the month ended? Yeah. And now you know how to do that. Now you know to put a particular, it was that. According to FASB, the central framework, an entity's revenue may result from for me? We have a B on the table.
Oh, gosh, I hope.
You said B? You said B? You said G? So we got a B and a D. You guys ready for the answer? The decrease in the liability from primary operation. So result from a decrease in liability. So what are we talking about here, guys? So let me just explain that a little bit further for you guys. So that means that if somebody comes and says, hey, you don't have to pay me as much money for this as we originally said, then that can come back and say it's a revenue. Another way we look at it like this. Okay, so let's just get down to the nitty gritty here. If you were to not pay your mortgage or not pay a doctor's bill, a doctor can wipe that liability off. Okay, and then they will send that to the IRS, and the IRS looks at that write-off as that you didn't pay that money, so it's like income to you. Follow what I'm trying to say here? Okay. So we did some tax applications there or whatever. So a decrease in a liability can technically be revenue. Again, we're taking things up a couple of notches from accounting 101, so that's why we have a lot of these different concepts. Okay, describe basic assumptions of accounting. So we're almost there. We're doing pretty good. We have like 30 minutes left in class, and we're on slide 39. I think we got like 11 slides to go. Did you guys see when I said we got 11 slides to go? Did I get that right? Is that how we had you?
I'm more concerned with 30 minutes left.
We're concerned with 30 minutes left?
Yeah.
It's very Monday.
It is Monday, so we haven't seen each other for like 3 days. We can see each other Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
I know, it's not
Yeah, we're gonna see each other every day. Yeah, all the classes. So here we go with the start again. We had here we're going to be covering the what? The how. We talked about the line earlier, probably. Economic entity. You guys all know that we said that a company has its own little transactions over here. It has its own little checking account, and its owner has its own private checking account somewhere else. It could be the same bank, but it has a different checking account. Okay, so this almost means, so the company keeps this activity separate from its owners in other businesses. There have been, and we'll talk about this as we go through, some issues where some key players and some organizations actually convoluted that separation from the economic entity, and so it was hard to tell where the company's books ended and the individual's private books started.
So I have a question. Are there, in this idea of requirement, even keeping things separate, are there different rules from LLC? Because like I have immediately 4 people come to mind who I know have their own businesses, they're set as LLCs, and have one checking account that they use for both their business and their personal.
Well, we're kind of getting into some dangerous territory when we do that, because if we have one checking account, one checkbook, a lot of times businesses will actually not keep really good financial or accounting records during the year, and they'll just go back and they'll start pulling their checkbook out, and they'll start pulling these checks, whatever, so I paid this, I paid that, or whatever. And so, with that said, it kind of convolutes what was actually a business expense and what was a private, personal. Okay. And so, again, what we're talking about in this class today is those companies that are covered by the Securities Exchange Commission, those publicly traded companies. So, I guess what I'm trying to come back and say is that if they're comfortable with everything kind of intermingled together, it just makes it a very big headache for the person that's actually trying to file their taxes.
But there's not necessarily a prohibition.
There's not a
on
prohibition.
doing it under the corporation.
Okay, because it's a limited liability company, so that means it's just a highfalutin proprietorship. At the end of the day, who does the revenue, who does the net profit belong to? It belongs to the owner. But again, you see how it's convoluted, because how did I know that was gas that you paid for the company truck and not for your private vehicle? How do I know that was materials that you got from Home Depot for a particular job you're doing and not a remodeling thing that you had going on in the house? Okay, you follow what I'm trying to say here? Okay. So I'm just going to step back and say, if I were a tax auditor and I were seeing people's stuff in that manner, then I would have more questions. I would have more questions. And then, again, the prudent thing to do is to have a separate checking account for your business transactions and your private personal. Again, when you see both of them together, and if you were a tax auditor or whatever, the lights are going to go flashing and say, hey, there could be some cover up here with this individual.
In that case, like if you were separate accounts on an LLC, would you just pay yourself like a salary so that you can?
You can pay yourself a salary. You can have your withdrawal. You remember the withdrawal account? You can be pulling money out of withdrawals.
Yeah, I remember a bunch of those entries from, like, I think it was in Sage that it had entries.
That's going to be the more clean way to do it, is to do it through withdrawal. Corporations, I think you can pay yourself a salary. I don't really think you can with a legal liability company. I think there's a little more research to see. Okay, going concern. This means the company is supposedly, all the transactions that's going on, this company has an idea that's going to be in business for a long term. Terminology here is long enough to last long enough to fulfill its objectives and commitments. Okay. So let's do a little bit more of it here in class today.
All right.
There's some people that will go to a funeral home and they will pick out their casket, their vault, their this, their that, and they will prepay. They will give the funeral director a check for, we're talking probably about $8,000 to $10,000, could be more than that, depending on how lavish you want to be. And that funeral director says, okay, I'll take your money, and in the future, when you die, everything's taken care of. All right. Now, what's to say that that individual did not take your $10,000 that you just gave and do whatever with it? Okay. So if you get the $10,000 in your funeral, where are you supposed to put that money? In a special trust account, so that when the person does die, you go and pull their money out. Hopefully you made investments with it, and you made enough money to cover any kind of increases. Okay. You, when you went to the funeral home and you made that arrangement, you're hoping what? The funeral home is going to outlive, going to still be in business and actually
They'll outlive you.
outlive you.
Exactly.
Can you follow what we're trying to say here? That when we talk about going concern, that's what we're talking about. Now let me go ahead and talk about it on another life. Some of you guys may not remember this, but there was a furniture store over on Walton Way. It was General Freight, it was Freight General, it was this, it was that, or whatever. And for about 10 years, they were always going out of business. Okay. Now, in reality, they weren't going out of business, they were just using us as a ploy to get customers come in. Okay. When I hear the term that you're no longer a going concern, but you're going out of business, I'm looking that you're going to sell your assets for pennies on the dollars. That makes sense? So here we're trying to say is that the basic assumption is that you separate from your owner and that your company is prepared and is planning to continue in business and keep so you can fulfill the obligations that you have. If you're going out of business, to me that means is that we kind of leave all this behind and we're just trying to get rid of the assets and get as much money as we can and we close the doors. And that process should not take 10 years. All right? Then that's said about Freight General, General Freight, or whatever. Monetary unit, money is the common denominator. And we're also going to come back and say that we don't do any kind of inflation or deflation. So we don't do any kind of time value of money. You guys know that a dollar today is not worth what a dollar was 20 years ago? Okay. You guys understand that a dollar today is worth more than a dollar is going to be worth in 10 years? And the rationale behind that is because we have an inflationary process. Right now, our inflation is relatively low. There's some countries that have 20% inflation. Some countries may have more inflation than that, and I don't want to think about it. Okay? And so what that means is that every year, the prices are going up. In some places, it could be 200%. Okay. All right, so that happens sometimes in some of the third world countries, some of the countries that are developing, they have some issues. So monetary unit, right now, our inflation and our deflation, prices do decrease sometimes. It's not the norm, but they do. They're kind of stable, but it's not a big change. So we say that a dollar from 50 years ago is still the value of a dollar today, and that's kind of misleading, but because it's not been a major inflationary process, we view it in that form. The next term here means that a company can divide its economic activities into time periods. Okay. So here we're talking about long enough to last to fulfill your objectives or your commitments. That could encompass the whole life of the business. Here we're going to come back and say that economic life of that business needs to be divided up into periodic time periods. Okay, so Again, all companies would be required to do financial statements at least one time a year, right? Why would you need to do it at least one time a year? You get your net income so you can calculate your taxes. So divide your activity in the 10 years. Other companies may do it monthly. My understanding is that Walmart actually do a semblance of an income statement every day. They look at the revenues and expenses every day. Give some every company. Okay. So here's an illustration. Identify which basic assumption of accounting is best described in each item below. Okay. The economic activities of KC Corporation are divided into 12 periods for the purpose of issuing its annual reports. Okay. Locatron? Is that? Well, it's old right here. So.
Solartron,
I don't
solar
know.
panels.
So, I don't know how big. Okay. Does not adjust its amounts in its financial statements for the effects of inflation. Monetary unit.
Yeah, there we go.
Monetary unit. Okay. Walgreens reports current and non-current classifications on its balance sheet. I think we come back and say that we what? Going concern? Because they have what they're going to pay now, what they have what they're going to pay next time, and what will have in the future. And the economic activities of General Electric and subsidiaries are merged for accounting and reporting purposes.
That's the other one.
That's the, okay, so we can have a bunch of different companies and then roll it all into one and report them in one company. Okay, so there's your next. Okay, here's where W.R. Grace, Adelphia, the senior company employees entered into transactions that were allowing for the employees' financial interests in those of the company. Self-deal with the company guaranteed over $2 billion worth of loans to the company's family. What is that? Okay, they're saying if these suckers don't pay you, then you get the money from the company. Okay. And it's wrong because it's a separate economic entity, so we shouldn't be making, we shouldn't be co-signing, so to speak, for the owners. W.R. Grace used to be supposed to pay for the department, the chef, for the company chairman. Who should be paying for the chef and the department?
I'm just flabbergasted by the idea of having a personal chef in an apartment.
Okay. Well, we're talking about an apartment. We're probably not talking about a small little apartment like we were thinking about. We're probably thinking about maybe a penthouse apartment. Okay. Does that kind of put it in a better connotation of a chef?
You gotta think of like Trump's apartment in Trump Tower that's like, what, 2 entire floors of the building or something? It's an apartment.
At what stage does that just become a home?
Condominium, you're going to own an apartment, you're going to be paying a monthly rent. Okay, so explain the application of basic principles of accounting. So here we go. With the two things we've talked about in this class for several times. We talked about historical costs. Why do we like historical costs so much? Because it is verifiable. We can go back and look and say, this is the receipt, this is the check, this is the actual document that we have here.
And it doesn't change over time.
It doesn't change over time. Fair value may be more useful, but the question is, how many times do I do this fair value thing? Do I do it in the morning when I come in at work? Do I do it again in the evening when I leave work? Because guess what? Values can change that quick. Okay. The other issue is that what if nobody else has sold anything that's similar to this? And so it's pure conjecture. Okay. Now, with those financial products, we talked about stocks and bonds and those type of things. we can get a pretty good idea of that because there's actually a market for those. But then my other idea would be, how can we go look at the market and make an adjustment? Do we do it daily? Do we do it weekly? Do we do it only on the day we're going to do the financial statements? Okay. So you guys follow what the issue would be if we do this? You know, what kind of problem we're going to have. So they have taken steps to give companies the option to use fair value. And the reporting of fair value information is increasing. But again, guys, I guess the conservative person in me says, hey, you know, this is an issue because we talked about one time that you only recognize a gain when you sell. You only recognize the loss when you sell because values can change.
I suppose the rest of automated computer systems may keep you in fair value.
Well, yeah, computers can, boom, you know, just have it monitor.
All that research and everything for you.
Right. Revenue recognition requires companies to recognize revenue in the same accounting, performance obligations satisfied. So in other words, when you do the work, you recognize the revenue. You guys follow what I'm trying to say here? So if you sign a contract last month, you didn't do any work until this month, you can't recognize revenue until this month. Okay, so we can actually do total recognition of revenue. We could actually do a partial recognition of revenue. So if I have a job that's 50% complete, okay, so technically I could recognize that 50% of the revenue. The next thing is expense recognition. The terminology is let an expense follow the revenues. So we want to do that concept we talked about in Accounting 101 called matching. We want to match up the expenses that it took to generate that revenue. Okay. So if I'm making cakes, okay, I'm going to include the cost of the ingredients, the oven, the labor, all that during the same time I recognize the revenue. I don't recognize it when I pay for it. I don't recognize the those costs when I make payment. I recognize them when I actually put the ingredients into the cake. So here we have product types here, period cost. With the period cost, it's kind of hard to match them up to the product. You guys will recall our conversations on that. And so there are actually expenses incurred. So there's no direct relationship between cost. But material, labor, and overhead, again, there's a direct correlation between those and the product. Okay, so here is an illustration. Assume that Bold Corporation signs a contract to sell airplanes to Delta Airlines for $100 million. To determine to recognize revenue, the 5 steps for revenue recognition. Okay, so here we have identified the contract, identified the separate performance obligation in the contract. What are they supposed to do? Give Delta Airlines a jetliner, right? Okay, so obligation, deliver planes to Delta. If there is a maintenance agreement also entered into, that's going to be separate. Here, determine the transaction price. Boeing has only one performance obligation, deliver the airplanes to Delta. So allocate the transaction price to the separate performance obligation. And then here, step number 5, recognize revenue when each performance obligation is satisfied. Okay. So let's just go back and let's try to make a little more sense. Let's say that you entered into a contract with a technical college and you are going to develop for us online classes. Okay. So what would you need to have an online class? In any class, you're going to have some type of instructional materials, it's called like a textbook or whatever. So you have to identify the textbook. Okay. So that would be, maybe we're developing a textbook. So the development of the textbook would be that we'd say that we have one thing checked off our list. Does that make sense? Okay. When you look at an online class, do you guys like to see the lectures, the PowerPoints, and those type of things, so the auxiliary materials? That would be a separate, so the textbook and the resources, that'd be two different things. So when I provided the textbook to you, then I could recognize the revenue for the textbook. When I provided you with the online other resources, then I could recognize those items. Okay? Can you think of anything else where there's stages of completion? Stages of completion. You go to the dentist. You say, "Hey, bud, I want to have some little cosmetic dentistry thing going on." And they sit down and they figure out everything you want to do. Okay. They're going to do some upward work, some lower work, whatever, just make it simple. So once they complete the upper work, what's going to happen? The dentist is going to recognize the revenue. He's also going to recognize the expense associated with generating that revenue. You come back in another day, you're going to do the lower, and then you see what I'm trying to say here. So once you have something completed, and you will determine that in your contract, it will be completed. So if I were doing a house for you, it'd be a stipulation. When the shingles went on the house, we're going to say that we're so much complete. And so I could recognize up to that point the revenue that you actually get paid for the house. When I give you the keys and hand you, then I'm going to recognize the remaining amount for the house. Right? Full disclosure, provide information of sufficient importance to influence the judgment and decision of an informed user. They're provided through financial statements, notes to the financial statements, otherwise known as statements of disclosure. Okay. And then sometimes we need to just add some supplementary information. Supplementary information might be some kind of chart, some kind of a graph that we use, some kind of detailed information to support what we're talking about. So, if I'm doing the financial statements, my supplementary information here might be that I actually give you an inventory sheet showing you how much inventory I have and the dollar value associated with that. Is that required? Not necessarily, but it would actually back up the dollar amount that you had on the balance sheet for inventory. Okay, so here we go with some other companies here. Say KC Corporation reports revenue in its income statement when it's earned instead of when the cash is collected. Revenue recognition. Now who? I'm not talking about the chocolate drinks, we're talking about the computer viewer there. Recognize depreciation expense for a machine over the 2-year period in which that machine helped the company earn revenue. This recognition. Oracle reports information about pending lawsuits in the notice in its financial statements. Full disclosure? Yeah. Okay. So here, let's stop and talk about this just for a second. If Oracle Corporation thought that these lawsuits, and it had the attorney also thought that they were frivolous and they would not be awarded, but it's just one of those things that happens. By the way, when you're in business, people look at you and think that you have lots of money, and so they'll come up and they'll do these lawsuits. So if you've done your research and you feel that the lawsuit will be when it gets to court, it's going to be thrown out, it's still recorded. Okay. In our idea of transparency today, we would still talk about it, but we'd also talk about that this is the dollar value that we think we need to pay. All right, so that's full disclosure. Eastman Kodak Company reports land on its balance sheet at the amount paid to acquire, even though the estimated fair value is greater. Measurement. Talk about in their use of what kind of measurement? For. What do the numbers mean? Okay. So pro forma, beyond non-financial measures of investors, most companies increase and promote the performance of the companies through the reporting of various pro forma earnings measures. Okay, so we're looking to see what could happen in the future. Okay, so right here, we're just supposing that this could be our income statement, our balance sheet in the future. All right. The last thing we're going to talk about here, and we're getting into, I'm going to do this 50 something slides here. We're almost done, is cost constraint. Cost provided information must be weighed against the benefits that can be derived from using it. So, just because the information will be useful, sometimes it can be cost prohibitive. So again, we kind of balance those things out. I've used the illustration, I think, in this class that I can make sure that my cashiers never make any mistakes by having a supervisor standing right behind the cashier. We don't do that because of cost constraints. It would not be cost effective to have that supervisor just monitoring one or two cashiers. So, you work with the lead because they'll say this person doesn't trust me, or and I don't know about you guys. If I'm typing and somebody or doing work process and somebody's watching me, I make all kinds of mistakes. You leave me alone in my little office, I can just go to town. Okay, so there's sometimes a little thing down here. Raphael Corporation is close to the fair value of its loans because I already asked them. So how much is it going to cost? It's not going to cost anything because it's already been generated. Willis Company does not disclose information on domestic financial statements unless the value information to the users exceeds the expense of data. Okay, so these are all talking about cost constraints. The homework is available to you guys in Wiley Plus. It is. I put it out in before class so you guys can see your chapter 2. Make sure that you complete your chapter 2 homework before class because chapter 2 homework in class will be that'll be our class period the next time is one without homework. Okay, so make sure that you get that. If you have any kind of questions, please don't hesitate to come to class and ask us questions. Okay, even though we started about 5 minutes late, we still finished on time. Hopefully, I put enough time out there for the capture. At 12 minutes left on the capture. Stop the capture. Stop. Let me take roll real quick so I can see.